The news of the pregnancy was unexpected. It can't be. Kate didn't believe, looking at the test. She was with Vince only once, and then he left. They immediately decided that only this night would be between them. And now, this pregnancy. The girl cried over the test and didn't know what to do next. She was graduating from college with wonderful prospects. Practice in the best place that others could only dream of. But this practice will not happen if she has to sit with the child. Her temples throbbed. Her head began to hurt. Kate waited for her mother to return home and told her everything. "My daughter, don't think about abortion. I'll help you raise your child. I'll have a granddaughter. Don't give up on her. It's a gift from God." Kate didn't know what to do. She didn't want and didn't expect this child. She felt sick at the mere thought that she would have to give birth out of wedlock. And the thought of giving up her career and becoming a stay-at-home mom was completely unbearable for her. Vince immediately cut off all contact. Of course, the opportunity to go to his firm was to let him know that he would have a child. But Kate promised she would not appear in his life again. She didn't want to fall in love with him even more and be left without the career she had dreamed of since leaving school. The girl still decided not to have an abortion, succumbing to the persuasion of her mother. She began to regret it at a later date when she could no longer have an abortion. She cried into her pillow and cursed fate for such an ordeal and asked God to give her strength. The son was born healthy. Kate's mother was not very happy with her grandson because she expected that a girl would be born. Even the ultrasound erroneously showed that Kate was expecting a girl, but a boy was born. All his indicators were excellent, and the child developed as needed. But he didn't receive maternal love and care because Kate immediately went to work and began to build her career. Grandmother took care of her grandson as best as she could. Shane was a quiet and calm boy, so he didn't cause any problems for his family. When her son was 6 years old, Kate often went on business trips. When she was in one of them, she received terrible news from her mother. "Kate, we have a grief. Shane climbed with the guys on the garages and fell off the roof. There's something wrong with his spine." Kate thought about it, and her heart didn't even skip a beat. But any mother would already rush to her son to support him and help him. But the woman felt nothing. She also didn't fly home the next day because she had to complete all the business on a business trip. Kate returned home only on the 5th day. She entered the hospital room where her mother was sitting next to an emaciated and exhausted boy. "Mommy." Shane smiled and tried to sit up, but couldn't. He writhed in pain and pulled his arms to his mother, but she did not come to him, standing in the doorway and looking at him. The boy continued to say, "I'm sorry. I love you." The boy's eyes filled with tears, but even this didn't touch the cold heart of his mother. Kate pursed her lips as she walked out into the hallway with her mother. Everything was clear without diagnosis and conclusions from doctors. Grandma said, "He won't be able to walk anymore. Now, he will need such care that you will have to choose between him and your work." Kate lowered her head. Her answer was more than obvious. "Daughter, give him to an orphanage for the disabled. Why do you need such a burden? Let him live there, and you will marry and bear children for yourself." The next day, Kate wrote in the hospital the rejection of the child under the reproachful glances of the head of the department and the nurse, and left all his documents. She was warned that she could be called to the guardship authorities, but she said that she was flying away on another business trip and she didn't have time to talk. Kate said in disgust, "Do whatever you want with him. I don't need a burden. I'm still too young and beautiful to waste my life on diapers and caring for him." At that moment, the woman's heart clenched in her chest, but only for a second. The woman understood that she was abandoning her own child, her own son. She will never see him again. When she passed the hospital room, she didn't even look in, even though she heard her son crying, who was informed by the nurse that his mother would not come anymore. She probably did it on purpose to put pressure on Pity. But Kate overcame all feelings inside and turned off all her emotions. "Mommy, forgive me. Don't leave me, Mommy. Mommy, I can walk." The scream quickly faded into consciousness as soon as Kate stepped outside. In the orphanage for the disabled, Shane couldn't open up to anyone for a long time. The caregivers tried to befriend him, but he would not talk to them. When he was allowed to sit down, he spent most of the time sitting on the bed and looking out the window in the hope that his mother or grandmother would take him away from there. The boy sincerely believed that his family needed him, and that they decided to leave him in the hospital for a while until he fully recovered. But months passed, and his back didn't want to fully recover, and his mother and grandmother didn't want to take him home. Tears streamed down the boy's cheeks every night. He cried and asked God to return his mother to him, and that she would take him home. One day, this orphanage for the disabled got into a program of help from a wonderful massage therapist who dealt with similar problems. Even seriously ill patients were recovering thanks to his golden hands. And from time to time, he did charity work, doing free massage therapy courses. Shane was lucky to be one of those chosen by the doctor. The boy did everything he was told. He carried out every recommendation, and the treatment began to bear fruit. Sometimes, they say that there is no chance, but the most important thing is willpower and a person's desire for change. Shane was small, but he understood everything and did exactly as he was told, so that one day he could get on his feet, run to his mother, and say that he was already cured, and now they could live together again. 16 years have passed. Shane got to his feet anyway. But by this time, he had already realized that his mother didn't need him on his feet either. The guy successfully graduated from college, completed an internship, and received a job offer from a good company. The guy spent most of the night preparing for the interview, so he didn't get enough sleep, but he managed to pull himself together. The female secretary said, "The boss is already waiting for you." Shane took a deep breath, knocked on the door, and entered the office. A man in an expensive suit sitting in the boss's chair said, "Good morning." His gaze was suddenly familiar for a moment, as if Shane had met him before when he was still young. Shane smiled. "Good morning. Here is my CV and mock-ups of the work I have designed for the portfolio and in practice." The guy put a folder with documents in front of the boss. The man added, looking at Shane's CV, "Shane, have a seat." The guy thanked him for the offer and sat down. The door to the office opened, and Shane turned towards the sound. His gaze fell on the woman, from whose hands all the papers fell in the same second. She looked at the guy for a few seconds with a dumbfounded look, her mouth slightly open. He would recognize that face even if he were blind. He will never forget the icy look coming from the stone heart. The guy pretended he didn't recognize the woman, but he got to his feet, walked over to her, and began to help her pick up the papers from the floor, either out of politeness or to show her that he was no longer a helpless invalid. His mother also pretended not to recognize her son. Her trembling fingers betrayed the fact that this was not so. He himself decided not to say anything yet. He returned to his seat and settled comfortably in his chair. The boss asked, "Kate, are you all right?" He spoke with such warmth in his voice that it was immediately clear to Shane that they were in a serious relationship. Shane was afraid that now his mother would convince the boss not to hire him. It's unlikely that she will remember the maternal instinct, which has never visited her in these 16 years. She answered the boss, "Yes, it's okay." The boss began to ask questions, and Shane answered them firmly and confidently. "I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Mr. Roberts. Shane, Tell us more about yourself and your life. In our company, the relationship is almost like a family, so I would like to know a little more about the life of my employees. Of course, if you think it's too personal information, you don't have to tell me. Shane wondered, does that mean I'm hired? His palms were wet with excitement. Kate was silent all this time, studying the documents. Apparently, she too was supposed to conduct this interview. The boss nodded to Shane. You've been hired. Tell us about yourself. I don't have the most pleasant story, but if you insist. The chief nodded. If you don't mind, then I would insist. Life is not a fairy tale, and it has battered all of us. Then listen to me. I never knew my father, and my mother didn't need me. I still don't know why she gave birth to me. When I was 6 years old, I fell off the roof of a garage. I remember that my grandmother was then talking to a female neighbor and asked not to distract her, and the older boys called me. I became interested. They climbed onto the roof first, but the roof was slippery and I fell off the roof. I injured my spine. I was told that I would always lie down and not be able to stand up. My mother didn't come to see me for a very long time. I thought she was angry, and I dreamed of hugging and kissing her and asking for forgiveness. And when she arrived, she didn't even come up to me. Then the nurse told me that my mother would never come to me again. She doesn't like a son who can't walk. I screamed very loudly. I cried and asked her to forgive me. I swore I wouldn't do that again. But she didn't come back. And then a real magician appeared. I'm lucky he chose me. He did massages and recommended exercises for me. I did everything as he told me to get back on my feet and become needed again by my beloved mother. But when everything worked out for me, I realized that she didn't need me, and I decided to move on with my life. I studied hard and strived to become a competent specialist, and then I got a job offer from your company. That's how I ended up here. Shane gritted his teeth as if it hurt him to remember the moment his mother left him. He looked up and noticed Mr. Roberts' eyes were filled with tears. Mr. Robert wiped away a tear and shook his head, and Kate broke the pen she was holding. Kate didn't say that this woman is now sitting in the office, and Kate apologized and left the office. Shane talked a little more with the boss and promised that he would start work tomorrow morning. He said goodbye to the man, thanked him for the conversation, and left the office with a smile on his face. He was hired. On the street outside the office, Shane ran into his mother. He stopped beside her and looked at her. The guy asked her, "Mom, did you recognize me?" And the woman began to shake her head. "I beg you, don't say anything to Mr. Roberts. My relationship with him just started to get better. I can't lose the job I've longed for because of the mistakes of my past." Shane asked without taking his eyes off the woman, "So, you admit it was a mistake?" "I admit it, but I don't regret anything. If I had left you at home with me then, you would never have learned to walk again, and I wouldn't be able to do anything. Therefore, you should thank me. Above all, don't say anything to Mr. Roberts." Shane was disgusted. He shook his head and walked to his car. Shane had been working at Mr. Roberts' company for 2 weeks now, crossing paths with his mother from time to time. The woman didn't create any problems. She treated Shane like any employee, but more often than not, she avoided meeting him. One day, he saw an elderly woman near the office and immediately recognized her. It was his grandmother. She stood, crushing the handles of the bag with her fingers, and looked expectantly at the doors. And when she saw the guy, she began to cry. She asked, approaching the guy, "Shane, can I talk to you?" "Yes, you certainly may." "Hello, let's take a walk. I can suggest you go to a cafe." When Shane drove with his grandmother to the nearest cafe, he realized that he had long ago let go of his grudge against his mother and grandmother, who had abandoned him. He didn't wish them harm and didn't want to take revenge on them. As it happened, so it happened. Nothing can be returned. His grandmother sighed heavily. "It's all my fault. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to raise you." I knew Kate didn't need you. I persuaded her not to have an abortion, and then I started to get sick. I thought it was a girl, and a boy was born. That is, you. And when it all happened, I understood that Kate didn't need you. She didn't come the first day. And I was weak and couldn't cope with a disabled person. Forgive me if only I knew. You don't need to apologize. What was is gone. Shane, don't ruin Kate's life. She gave everything for her career. She sacrificed women's happiness. Don't tell your father the truth about her being your mother. Shane seemed to have been hit on the head at that second. He became catastrophically short of air. He realized that his mother didn't want to make up with him and get his forgiveness. She came to pray for his mother. And the father? What father was she talking about? Did his father work for the company? If Kate had not broken up with Christopher then, maybe everything would have turned out differently. Maybe you would have a family. And Christopher didn't try to find out how Kate's life turned out. If he had found out earlier, if he had known that he had a son. I beg you, don't ruin her career because there is nothing to return. His forehead was covered with sweat. Shane felt himself begin to shake. Mr. Roberts was his father. That's where he saw that look. He looked in the mirror every day, but didn't even guess that he looked so much like Mr. Roberts. And now, this similarity didn't go out of his head. His boss is his father. I heard you. Thanks for talking, but I think our conversation is over. Mr. Roberts will know for himself if he needs anything. Then Shane got to his feet, put the money for their ordered tea on the table, and hurried to leave. He was offended that his grandmother found him only to ask him not to tell anything to his father. And now it was clear to him why his mother was so frightened. His father didn't know anything about the fact that he had a son. Another 2 weeks have passed. Shane didn't know if he needed to share the truth with Mr. Roberts. After all, this news will be a severe blow to him. They sat in the boss's office and discussed one of the projects. Suddenly, Mr. Roberts patted Shane on his shoulder and said admiringly, "You are like a son to me. You understand me from half a word. You'll feel what I want to see, as if you read my thoughts. Perhaps God sent you to me for a reason." Shane said unwillingly, "Father, you have no idea how close to the truth you are." The words just fell off his tongue. Mr. Roberts opened his eyes wide in surprise, and then he laughed softly. "Funny, you're good with humor. I'm glad that we have established such a warm relationship." Shane didn't say another word. He regretted that he had told the truth. After all, he had no evidence of kinship with this man. And he didn't know if there was any point in trying to mend the relationship now. He didn't want to betray his mother. After all, everyone once receives his punishment from heaven. A month passed, which brought with it an unexpected stab in the back. Shane was framed. He had no doubt that his mother had done it. But why did she need it? Why did she do this? He didn't tell anyone about their relationship. Perhaps she was afraid that one day Mr. Roberts would notice the resemblance to his son and get to the truth. On that ill-fated day, Mr. Roberts chastised Shane in front of everyone. "I didn't think you would tell our competitors about our developments. I trusted you like a son. And you..." Shane sounded desperate. "I didn't do anything like that. Go away, and I don't want to see you ever again. You also tell me that my wife did it. No one saw them except you, me, and her." Shane knew it was useless to justify himself. Nobody believed him. He didn't have any proof. And he silently left, gathering his things. 2 weeks later, Mr. Roberts arrived home early from work. He quietly entered the house and heard his wife talking on the phone. "Mom, yesterday I saw him near the office. Shane was waiting for someone. Maybe he wanted to talk to his father. If Christopher finds out that he is his son and that I have abandoned our son, he will leave me. I'm afraid of it. I won't survive if I lose everything and if all my plans are ruined by the appearance of Shane. I really aspired to this position. I'll work for Christopher for a while, and then I can transfer to another company for a new position. What love! I was in love with him when I was young. Now, it's just an arranged marriage. I would not agree to a relationship with him again if it were not for an attractive position and the opportunity to transfer the necessary papers to competitors. What son was she talking about? It can't be. Christopher hastily approached Kate and grabbed her hand. He jerked her around to face him. The phone fell out of the woman's hand. Where is my son? Tell me. The woman began to make excuses. Christopher, you misunderstood me. I told the mother the story of my girlfriend. Where is my son? Don't fool me anymore. When I find out the whole truth myself, I will crush you. The woman began to stutter. This. Christopher growled, ready to raise his hand to Kate if need be. Who? She answered and lowered her head. Shane. Christopher seemed to have been electrocuted. His body began to tremble with pulsations. Shane is his son? That guy with the tough childhood is his son? Tears welled up in his eyes. Tell me that you were forced to send your child to an orphanage for the disabled, and that you didn't do it for a career. Kate screamed and yanked her hand away. I gave him away because I didn't need a burden. And I will also leave you because I'm tired of you. I'm tired of shaking in front of you and being afraid to take an extra step. Christopher laughed hysterically. Run away from me. Do you think that competitors will accept you because you handed over our project to them? But my lawyer is already handling the lawsuit, and your favorite competitors will pay me such a penalty that they will have nothing to pay the wages of their employees. And after your dismissal, you will not be hired for any good position with my recommendation. I want not a single thing of yours left in my apartment in an hour. Then, Christopher hurried out of the apartment. The woman threw threats and accusations at his back and insulted him, but he didn't listen to her. He was guilty before his son, before the guy whom his heart accepted almost immediately. When Christopher got to the apartment where Shane lived, he didn't dare to go in for a long time. How can he talk to his adult son, before whom he is so guilty? How to ask him for forgiveness for his spoiled childhood? How to apologize for the fact that he accused him of stealing? The man gathered his strength, went up to the third floor, and knocked on the door. The guy opened the door after a couple of minutes. He was surprised. Mr. Roberts, what are you doing here? I know everything, but only I don't understand if I can now ask your forgiveness. I'm so guilty in front of you. Son, forgive me for everything if you can. I didn't know. Tears streamed down Christopher's cheeks. Father, I hold no grudge against you. Everything is fine. Christopher and Shane embraced. Now they had each other and could deal with all the troubles together.